This hour, despite pressure from the international community, Iran says it's going to move forward with plans to enrich more uranium, a move seen by many world leaders as the last straw in a series of defiant actions by Iran. Well, joining me now to talk about the next step when it comes to Iran, investigative journalist and RT contributor Wayne Madsen. Wayne, thank you for being here. So after this announcement, experts say that Western officials are likely to use this as justification to press for more sanctions on Iran. What do you think?
Well, the call for increased sanctions may be a bit premature because what Iran has now is uranium, 3% enriched uranium. They're taking that up to 20% enrichment, as they claim is for their medical nuclear medicine purposes. Also, 20% is what's used for nuclear reactor for the power purposes. You need 90% enriched uranium to create a nuclear weapon. So all this, these complaints from the Western countries about Iran striving for a nuclear weapon, I think is just hyping the situation. There was also the issue of trading Iran's under-enriched uranium for 20% enriched uranium in a third country. And apparently it looked like France was the intended country where that would take place. Iran said, wait a minute, we don't want the exchange to happen in France. We want it to happen in Iran. Obviously, they didn't trust President Sarkozy, who I would not trust him either. He's a neoconservative. He, when interior minister, he was a guy who incited the riots in the French suburbs in the North African Muslim neighborhoods. He's supporting the ban on the burqa, and he's engaged in this political vendetta against his enemies, including former Prime Minister Dominique de Villepin. He's not a guy who I would want to deal with, and obviously the Iranians had problems with dealing with him as well as an honest broker.
But you know, this proposal to enrich uranium abroad, even with that issue, there seems to be a lot of back and forth about that, right?
I think we don't know what, of course, is going on in these diplomatic negotiations between the EU countries, Russia, China, and the United States. But obviously, there is some give and take. But this could be some muscle flexing for the purposes of Ahmadinejad and people like Obama and Gordon Brown and others.
Now, talk about this other proposal to exchange Iranian prisoners here for American hikers that are still in Iran. Do we know anything about these prisoners here?
Well, we do know that a former deputy defense minister in Iran was apparently kidnapped in Istanbul some years ago. It's thought he's held here in the United States. There have been others, of course. Also, the United States captured arrested and detained Iranian diplomats in Iraq. We don't know how many Iranians are being held, but this is a very traditional method of exchanging prisoners. It happened during the Cold War between the U.S. and the then Soviet Union all the time, and why not? It's something that happened in the past.
I want to go back to some of those numbers that you mentioned earlier. 20%, that's how much is needed for this medical reactor. It is a significant increase, like you said, but again, still not enough to make that nuclear weapon. Why do you think that perhaps other media outlets or even officials have sort of glossed over these facts? They're throwing out these numbers, but they're not saying, look, it's still not enough to make this weapon.
Yeah, the corporate media, of course, is really hyping on behalf of the White House, the Pentagon, those who have a vested interest in ratcheting up tensions with Iran and would like to see all these negotiations fail. And of course,
why is that? Why do you think that
well,
is?
First of all, the government of Israel is dead set against any negotiations with Iran. They want a very strong line taken with the Iranians, even though they want sanctions and maybe even military action. But we do know that they have a robust trade themselves, buying Iranian oil through Turkey, and every pistachio nut sold on the streets of Tel Aviv comes from Iran.
So what is next then for the international community when it comes to Iran? You're saying that sanctions might not be possible, so what is then? Are they going to sort of react to this, and how will they?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting to see how Russia and China deal with this issue. There was also an offer on the table that Brazil would be the third country to do the exchange of the uranium, and also we heard Russia and an unnamed Asian nation. We don't know, that might have been China, but they all play a part in this.
So a lot of different players in this issue. RT contributor Wayne Madsen, thank you again for your analysis.